You know, I make these videos for a lot of reasons. Sometimes I'm obsessed with a show and I just want to get my thoughts about it off my chest. Others, I want to give an anime that I really like more exposure, and this video might seem at first glance like an example of the latter, but I promise you it's not. I'm not making this video for me, I'm making it for you. This is a public service. See, like many of you, I spend a lot of my time looking at anime discussions on Reddit and Twitter. Naturally, that also means I spend a lot of time looking at anime memes, and this has been a good season for them. We've got new JoJo episodes, Zombieland Saga, senpais who are also bunny girls, all giving us comedic gold. And, I think there was another popular show with a lot of memes, but it's slipping my mind right now. Anyway, amid all of these shows being mined for internet points, I've been disturbed and incensed to see one particularly brilliant series remain untapped. Outside of a few enlightened Twitter accounts, I've seen next to nothing from skull-faced bookseller Honda-san. No screen caps, no reaction images, no endless quoting of "Special Yaoi book! Jesus Christ!" Nothing. And that is straight up unacceptable. This show is a goldmine of references, hilarious reaction faces, and surreal shots that are just begging to be taken out of context and have some third-rate captions photoshopped on top of them, because somehow that's become the most acceptable way to talk to other people about our hang-ups, feelings, and problems. Here, I'll do one right now. Now imagine what someone who's actually good at memes could do with that. Or this. Or this.
Sorry, we don't have this one.
You got sweating skeletons, people in weird masks freaking out, and loads of oddly handsome foreigners demanding to buy erotic manga from socially awkward bookstore clerks.
Excuse me? I'm just looking for this manga.
Every other shot of this show is exploitable in one way or another, but nobody's exploiting it. And apparently nobody's watching it either. Despite the fact that each episode is a paltry 10 minutes long, it's nowhere near the top of Crunchyroll's popularity charts where it belongs, and there are only 30,000 some odd people who say they're watching it on MAL, which is way short of the every human being who has ever lived or ever will live that it rightly deserves. And maybe some of that's my fault. Maybe I didn't impress upon you all just how important it is that you watch this show with the bonus recommendation at the start of my fall anime video. Hold on, let me check. But as a bonus recommendation, if you've got a spare 10 minutes a week, you need to be watching Skull-Faced Bookseller Honda-san. Yep, I see my mistake there. I didn't want to come across as too pushy, so I made it sound like you have a choice. But if you're currently watching this YouTube video, you almost certainly have a spare 10 minutes a week, so allow me to restate that point, but this time, I'm dropping the soft sell. You need to be watching Skull-Faced Bookseller Honda-san. No excuses, no exceptions. And I'm not just saying that because the world deserves better memes. You also deserve better entertainment in your life, and no matter what you're currently watching, unless maybe it's Wascally Wabbit or Zombieland Saga, Honda-san is better entertainment. And now, after 3 minutes of ranting about its image macro potential, I'm gonna tell you why it's also a great anime. One of the best, in fact, of this season and of this whole damn year. The first word that springs to mind when you look at anything from this show is probably weird. I mean, it's a series about a talking skeleton, a lady in a medieval helmet, a plague doctor, and various other kooky-looking weirdos working in a bookstore. But spend a minute or two with this show and you'll quickly realize that its plot and these characters are surprisingly normal. See, Skull-Faced Bookseller Honda-san is based on an autobiographical web manga originally published on Pixiv that depicts the real-life challenges of working on the manga floor of a real chain bookstore, which definitely isn't Book Off. So giving every character a weird head and nickname is less about creating an absurd atmosphere and more about protecting the anonymity of Honda-san's real co-workers, whom all these characters are obviously based on. Although it does, of course, have the side effect of making everything that happens to these characters feel a little bit inherently absurd and surreal, their personalities comedies come off as very three-dimensional and grounded, which makes sense because they are just slightly exaggerated representations of real people. And the storyline of each episode is more in the vein of here's some funny things that happened to me this week, as opposed to the over-the-top plot lines and gags that you see in more fictionalized work-life comedies like Working. The reactions of the characters are played up for laughs, of course, but most of the problems that they face are normal, everyday scenarios like rushing to restock shelves, dealing with customers who have odd requests or don't speak Japanese, and sometimes putting up with dehumanizing, soul-sucking corporate bullshit like customer service training camps. It doesn't quite present the same level of continuity and character-driven humor or existential horror as, say, Agretzko, but it's very much a comedy in the same vein, with relatable, human characters who just happen to look a little kooky. If you love that show, you're almost certainly going to love this one, and if you've ever worked retail, the specific plights faced by our sweaty, awkward skeletal hero and his compatriots might be even more relatable to you than the white-collar work seen in Sanrio's series. There's also something inherently funny about Honda-san's thinly veiled efforts to sneak around stringent Japanese copyright laws. The manga is published by Kadokawa's Media Factory branch, so Kadokawa's brand and properties are allowed to be shown on screen, but everything else has to be censored to stave off rabid lawyers, and the show is really lazy about it. Often when discussing a famous creator or manga or a publishing company, Honda-san will just bleep out a single syllable of their name, making it very easy to tell exactly who's being talked about.
在庫が全滅したキングス5号入荷するってガッツム愛蔵版にスッタンク愛蔵版
And with brands that come up frequently in the manga business, specifically Shonen Jump publisher Shueisha, they just slightly distort the spelling of the name. So every time they're mentioned, a bit of text pops up to reassure viewers that Honda is in fact talking about Shueisha, with a capital E in the middle, no relation. One of my favorite moments in the series so far has to be when Honda-san goes off on a tangent about how much he likes Golden Kamui, at which point Sugimoto and Asirpa pop up on screen with paper bags over their heads. I don't know, maybe I'm just particularly keen on these jokes because my job means I constantly have to be dancing around Japanese copyright provisions as well, but the way that Honda-san puts the bare minimum effort required to get around them puts a huge smile on my face every time I see it. It's perfectly in line with the rest of the show's straight-faced, laid-back, understated sense of humor. But there's more to recommend about this show than just the fact that it's really, really fucking funny, if that's not enough for you. It's also
so educational! You're really weird, kid.
Because so much of the show's comedy is derived from the subtle absurdities of retail work and dealing with Japanese publishing companies, Honda-san ends up explaining a lot of things about how all of that works. It shows you a lot of little things that you never really think about, like the work that goes into setting up promotions and product launches in stores, as well as handling more timely products like magazines. And it offers a look at the complicated distribution chain of sales reps, wholesalers, and publishers that forms the backbone of the book-selling industry. It's a fun little peek into the realities of retail and corporate culture in Japan, and I can't speak to how accurate it is, but it's presented in what feels like a very honest manner. Of course, it's all based on Honda-san's limited perspective, and there's a pretty great scene in episode 7 where he acknowledges that his experiences don't represent those of every bookseller in a way that I really don't want to spoil. All I'll say is that it had me laughing so hard I was crying. Even if you've got no interest in the business side of things, though, you can probably still learn a thing or two from Honda-san, especially if you're, say, a North American or European fan of anime and manga who really wants to visit Japan and buy some stuff straight from the source at stores like Book Off and Animate in Akihabara. Hypothetically speaking, of course. Insofar as you could say that Honda-san has recurring gags, one of the most frequent ones is Honda dealing with awkward, sometimes overbearing foreign customers, who are often looking for
Japanese erotic manga.
And while these interactions are generally presented as being innocuous and funny and aren't that big a deal in the grand scheme of things, they do highlight how enthusiastic foreign customers can sometimes come off as unintentionally rude or off-putting, which can be hard to deal with in a culture and business where you're not really ever supposed to say no, and you rely on your customers to implicitly understand that and pick up on social cues in order to help you avoid it. So, if you are planning a weeb pilgrimage to Akihabara and you don't want to come off as oblivious or rude or Logan Paul, Honda-san can help you understand the mindset of retail workers over there and act as a roadmap of sorts to aid you in avoiding social pitfalls. Even if that doesn't describe you, though, in case I wasn't clear enough a few minutes ago, you need to be watching Honda-san, full stop. It's hilarious, charming, uplifting, and painfully relatable. Also, the OP is, surprisingly, for a short show with limited animation, an absolute banger. And on top of that, it's packed with some pretty clever references. It's almost certainly going to be somewhere on my best OPs of 2018 list, so if you don't want to be staring at the screen in dumbfounded confusion when that comes out, just watch the dang show, please, and start making some memes about it. By the way, on the subject of books, I want to give a quick shout out to the Kickstarter campaign for Kamigakari God Hunters, which is a popular Japanese seinen anime style tabletop RPG with some really cool systems that Serpent Sea Games is currently working to translate into English. Not only does the game have really interesting lore and seem like it'll be a blast to play, but especially with their backer rewards, it's surprisingly affordable by tabletop standards. This isn't a sponsorship or anything, Kamigakari just looks really fun and looks like the kind of thing that you guys might enjoy. Plus, with 7 days left to go in their campaign, they are tantalizingly close to their stretch goal of releasing the second expansion book in English, and I really want to play that. Let me know in the comments below which of Honda-san's co-workers and friends you think best represents you. Personally, I like to think of myself as a welding mask type. And while you're down there, don't forget to hit the like button if you liked the video, of course, and subscribe for more Mother's Basement videos every week. I'm Geoff Thew, professional shitbag, signing out from my mother's basement.